Hi everyone, welcome to Mountain Home Stories. As many of you know that I'm currently reading Anna Alice Chapin's The True Story of Humpty Dumpty, and today it's going to be the 4th episode. New listeners can find the previous 3 episodes in my channel if you'll search for the playlist. And I'm certain you'll enjoy this story, and I hope it will serve as a wonderful way to sharpen your English as you read along the way with me. A gentle reminder, if you haven't subscribed yet to Mountain Home Stories, then please consider subscribing. And now let's begin. Chapter 11. Into the City of the Wicked King. Dick turned and saw a very pretty lady in a green gown that floated about her in the water, and bare feet that lightly pressed the sand. "I want to get to the Red City," he explained simply. "Well, come along," said the pretty lady with a musical little laugh, and she picked him up in her arms and held him close. "Now shut your eyes." He did as she told him to, and she kissed him lightly. Her lips felt warm even through the cold water. "Now open your eyes," she commanded. Dick stared about him. He was no longer at the bottom of the sea, but on solid, dry land again, just in front of a big iron gate with a grey stone wall stretching on either side, and the tops of a number of crimson houses and turrets showing beyond the wall. The pretty lady put Dick down and laughed again. "Here you are," she said, "at the very gate of the Red City." But, gasped Dick, "what became of the old witch of the sea?" The lady laughed even more merrily than before. "I am the old witch of the sea," she said. "Oh, and ever so many persons. It is my pet game, playing at being all sorts of different people. Goodbye, little mortal boy. I have an idea that we shall be very good friends one of these days, and I'm glad that we met. Goodbye, and don't forget that you have been kissed by the fairy of fancy." "Is that your name?" asked Dick, looking at her gravely. "It's one of my names. Your sister Bab calls me the Idle Princess, and if you asked Meg, she would say that I was the lady dreams come true. You'll know me by 100 other names by and by. Good luck, and goodbye." And she danced away from him laughing, her golden hair tossing in the wind. In a moment she had disappeared. And now, thought Dick, to get into that Red City. While he was thinking this problem over, he heard a voice cry, "Good fortune, Dick! I'm off to see how Bab and Meg are getting on. You have done well to get here so soon. Good luck, good luck." It was Busy Buzz. Before Dick could even answer him, he was off, a mere glimmering green speck in the distant light. Dick felt more cheerful after seeing him, but he wished that he might have stopped long enough to advise him as to the best way of entering the city. For lack of fuller directions, he started to follow the wall for a time, to see if there might not be any opening. And as he walked, he suddenly heard a voice just over his head, whispering in saddest accents, "Oh, shall I never be free?" Dick looked up, startled. There, at the top of the wall, was Humpty Dumpty himself at last. As we have heard before, Humpty Dumpty was an egg, a huge, white, smooth egg. The only thing about him that was different from other eggs was that he had features. That is, he had features of a sort, and also limbs, though very queer ones. On the pallid white surface of the eggshell was sketched a large, mournful face which looked as though it had been drawn in lead pencil, and 2 little thin arms and 2 little thin legs stood out from the shell like spider limbs. He was sighing and mourning in a very pathetic way, and Dick felt extremely sorry for him. "Oh dear," groaned poor Humpty Dumpty, addressing the air and the sky. "Will no one ever come to rescue me?" "Yes, indeed," cried Dick eagerly. "I have come to rescue you." "What?" exclaimed Humpty Dumpty. "A rescuer at last! Let me look. Oh, let me look." He gazed down at Dick, and then his expression became even sadder than before. "What could you do?" he asked in deep depression. "You, a little mortal boy." "I know I'm little," said Dick, feeling rather hurt, "but your mother thinks that I can help you get away anyway." "Did my mother send you?" questioned Humpty Dumpty in surprise. "Yes, indeed," said Dick. "And, oh, dear Prince Humpty Dumpty, won't you please let me try to help you?" "Oh, you're welcome to try," said Prince Humpty Dumpty gloomily. "There's not the slightest objection to your doing that. Only I feel it my duty to warn you that you won't like it in this place. It isn't at all a pleasant city to live in, and the king is a most annoying person." "Well," said Dick, "I don't expect to have much fun, you know. Not what you'd really call fun, that is. But I want to get into that city most awfully. Can you think of a way? The wall is pretty high to climb." "Oh, it is very easy to get in," declared the egg, with dark meaning. "Your trouble will be in getting out." I suppose so," said Dick, and for a moment felt just a wee bit queer. Suppose that the wicked king or his charming person called Grump should take it into his head to turn him into an egg, or something even worse? But that cowardly thought only lasted for a moment, for Dick was a brave little boy, and aloud he cried cheerfully, "Well, tell me how to get in, anyway." "Climb up the flowering vine," said Humpty Dumpty. "Repeat in each blossom as you pass the words, 'Help me, help me,' that's all." Dick noticed that the outside of the wall was covered with pretty climbing flowers of a bright red color. It looked like a morning glory vine, only the blooms were scarlet. He put his foot into the tangle of green at the bottom and cried boldly, "Help me, help me," into the first red cup that he saw. In a moment more, he was climbing up as easily and merrily as though the delicate tendrils were a strong ladder. Once at the top, he thanked the flowers politely and shook Humpty Dumpty's thin spidery hand. "Why can't you get down the same way?" he inquired. "Looking like this," said the unfortunate egg. "Go home to my mother in an eggshell? Never. Besides, I'll never go until I can take the princess with me. And besides all that, you just try to move me, that's all." Dick tried his best and soon found that the great egg was quite stationary. "Without the help of some sort of a spell, I can't move nor be moved," said Humpty Dumpty with sad calm. "You see why I haven't escaped, don't you?" Dick felt more determined than ever to find the princess and join forces with her. Surely, since she was in love with Humpty Dumpty, she must be able to suggest some way of setting him free. He jumped down into the Red City and, waving a farewell to Humpty Dumpty, he ran away in search of the princess. "The tallest tower in the city," he repeated to himself, remembering the sea kobold. "That ought to be easy to find." He looked about him anxiously. The Red City of the wicked king was a place of many and narrow streets that turned every other moment in the queerest, crookedest ways imaginable, and sometimes brought up in short, dark alleys that frightened Dick. He wandered about for some time between the silent, dark red buildings. Everything was crimson in this horrid city, and for a long time he did not meet a living soul. He wondered what had become of the people who must live in these funny red houses. They surely couldn't all be dead, or sick, or asleep, or in prison, or away visiting in the country. There must be some few who were shopping, or paying calls, or attending to their business, or looking out of their front doors, or taking a walk. Yet there seemed to be no one at all. There was something really rather horrid and frightening in these little silent red streets, with so many corners and turnings, and so many blind alleys. They are little short streets, only open at one end, and shut-up-looking houses. Dick found himself hurrying faster than before, and looking around every now and then, as though something unpleasant and big were behind him. Where did the wicked king live? He wondered. And where was the highest tower in the city? At last, as he was hastening along, he happened to peer into a window that was nearly on a level with his own head. Of course, it was always rude to look into people's windows, and Dick knew it. But things were so very dreadful, and he was so anxious to find some human being, that he thought that this once he might do it. And there, gazing out of the window, was a little boy of about his own age. Dick stopped at once and said, "Hello," and the other little boy said the same. And then the two little boys stood and stared at each other. "My name's Dick," said one. "What?" cried Dick. "Not the sea kobold's son?" "Yes, indeed," sighed the little boy. "And I'm kept a prisoner here in the Red City because my father made the wicked king angry. I am very tired of being a prisoner. I want to go back and live in the sea. They took all my lovely scales away too, and I do so want them back." Dick was very sorry for poor Mudge, but he was very glad they had met, and he asked him to tell him the way to the highest tower in the city. "You go on to the right, always to the right," said Mudge, "until you come to the palace, and then you walk around the palace 3 times, moving to the left, and then you stop under a tree with green flowers on it, and then you look up, and you will see the princess in her tower." "Oh dear," said Dick, "I'll never remember all that. Could you not come with me and show me? Oh, I forgot, you are a prisoner." "Oh," said Mudge, "I'm not a prisoner in that way. I can get out of this house whenever I want to. It is the city that I can't leave. I'll come with you if you like. I often go to see the princess and tell her how Humpty Dumpty is looking." He climbed out of the window as he spoke. "But doesn't he always look pretty much the same?" asked Dick. "Oh yes," said Mudge, as they set out. "But even so, she likes to hear about him. I just say, 'He is as well as usual, your highness,' and that satisfies her." "Is she a nice princess?" asked Dick. "Oh yes, she's rather small and pretty and kind, and her father's horrid to her. She wears lovely things and sits and cries in the tower all day." Dick felt ready to cry himself when he thought of the poor, pretty, small, kind princess who was in so much trouble. Perhaps he could rescue her as well as Humpty Dumpty. He became quite excited at the thought. And Mudge. He must be rescued, of course. It was really wonderful, the number of people in the Red City who needed a champion like himself. "Why are there no people about?" he asked Mudge. "Because," Mudge answered, "everyone is too much afraid of the wicked king. When he is in a bad temper, he has people's head chopped off without a moment's notice, and the citizens think it wiser and healthier to keep indoors as much as possible." In time they reached the palace, a huge, splendid building which seemed to be made chiefly of rubies, and after walking around it 3 times, always to the left, they looked up at last through the branches of the green-blossomed tree. And there, sure enough, was the highest tower in the city, a tall, tall tower, with one little window about halfway up. "Here is where the princess lives," explained Mudge. And then he called softly, "Princess Star! Princess Star!" Chapter 12. Princess Star. Dick could not imagine how the princess could hear, way up in the air so high, but in a minute a pretty, frowning face appeared, leaning out over the windowsill. A sweet, rather cross little voice, you could hear every word quite clearly, said, "You bad Mudge! Why did you not come sooner?" Then she caught sight of Dick and gave a little scream. "Who's that with you?" "Someone sent by Mother Goose to help Prince Humpty Dumpty," said Mudge. "Mother Goose? My future mother-in-law!" exclaimed the princess and sighed. "I should like to see him closer," she added, and was silent for a moment, as though thinking. But in that moment something happened. A sound of voices and tramping feet echoed around a corner of the palace, and the princess suddenly pulled in her head, while Mudge as promptly took to his heels. So Dick was left alone, for he was too bewildered to run at first. And by the time that he had made up his mind to try to escape, he was entirely surrounded by some fierce-looking men-at-arms, all dressed in bright red. "What are you doing here?" demanded the leader ferociously. "Stealing flowers from our trees?" suggested one of the others. Dick did not know what to say. He hated to lie, but there was the princess to be thought of, and Humpty Dumpty, and Mother Goose, and Meg, and Bab, and dozens of other considerations. So he decided not to tell quite all the truth. They are very pretty," he admitted, hanging his head and feeling very much ashamed, for his many faults had never included lying before. "It is against the law, and you must go to prison," declared the soldier. "Probably the wicked king, our master, will have you beheaded without delay, and, for my part, I think that even that will be better than you deserve." Dick felt so sad and angry at the thought of failure, to say nothing of the danger that he was in, that he could have cried. Only, being a boy, of course, he didn't. But he wished hard for some idea to come to him that would show him a way out of his trouble. And suddenly a big dragonfly whizzed up to him, apparently on its way to the green flowers on the tree overhead. With a sudden impulse, Dick whispered, "Help me, dear, good, kind dragonfly," as he had to the flowers. The dragonfly wheeled in its whirling flight and flew close to his lips. "Tell Busy Buzz, the goblin," murmured Dick, and the insect darted swiftly away. Dick could not tell whether or no if it had heard him or would repeat his message, but he felt a trifle happier. "Come on, thief," said the man-at-arms, pulling Dick along by the arm. At this point the princess stuck her head out of the turret window once more. "What have you there?" she asked very sweetly. The men answered her most respectfully, for though she was a prisoner in a turret of her father's castle, they all looked up to her with something approaching adoration, something which, with all their fear, they never gave her cruel father. "This is a thief, your highness," said the headman in red, bowing very low. "He was about to steal some of the flowers from the beautiful tree that grows under your highness's window." "Why, the horrid little wretch!" exclaimed the princess, pretending to be extremely angry. "Just to bring him up to me! I should like to look at any little boy who could be so terribly wicked." "We must take him to prison at once, your highness," protested the man, but she persisted. "I want to see him," she said. "I'd like to box his wicked ears myself. That lovely tree! Why, looking at it and counting its blooms every morning is one of the few pleasures I have." And she pretended to sob bitterly. "Bring him up," she cried again. "Bring him up, I say." "Oh, well," said the man-at-arms with a shrug of his shoulders. "Of course, if your august highness insists." And Dick was taken into the palace by a side door and marched up ever so many stairs to the princess's room. There they found, keeping guard, several men who let them pass, looking quite amazed. And so they came at last into the Princess Star's tower prison. The Princess Star was really a very pretty little princess, though she did not look particularly cheerful, nor even remarkably good-tempered. And her room itself was a marvel of gorgeous disorder. Flowers and jewels and splendid stuffs were flung about as though the princess had been venting her temper upon them. There was a parrot on a perch, a yellow cat on a cushion, a big green lizard on the end of a gold chain, a little silver cage of queer birds, and a big crystal basin full of beautiful fishes of all sorts, swimming about in rose-colored water. In the center of everything sat the princess on a little gold stool with 3 legs, for all the world like a milking stool, dressed in some very magnificent robes and gems, and with her crown somewhat awry. When she saw Dick, she pretended to fly into a rage and to try to box his ears. But finally, She very cleverly pretended to calm down and declared that he wasn't a bad-looking little boy for a thief, and then she said that she needed a page to look after her pets and announced that she would keep him. The head man-at-arms objected, of course, saying that he must take the thief to prison to await the pleasure of the wicked king. But at that the princess flew into another rage, real this time, and threw things at him, beginning with a jeweled hourglass and ending with a mandolin, until he was very glad to leave the royal young lady's apartments on any terms. So they all backed away as fast as they possibly could and shut the door very tight behind them, and Dick was left alone with pretty bad-tempered, disorderly Princess Star. "There!" she exclaimed, flinging herself into a sort of throne-like chair that was made of silver and inlaid with gold. "Now we can talk sense at last. Tell me at once who you are and why you are here." So Dick told her obediently, and she listened with the deepest attention. "You're a dear little boy," she said at last, "and you may sit on my lap if you want to." Dick did not want to, for he thought it babyish, but he hated to seem rude, so he accepted her invitation and found that a princess's lap was very much like other people's. It reminded him a little too much of his mother's and made him homesick, so he got down just as soon as he could politely. "And now," said the princess, "what are we to do next? I wish we knew where the spell can be found that can move my poor Humpty Dumpty from this dreadful place on the top of the city wall." "So do I," Dick was beginning, when there was a sudden sound outside. The door flew open, and they saw... Chapter 13. Harness the Reindeer. But to know what they saw, we must first go back to Santa Claus's house, where we left Bab sleeping in front of the big fire. She was dreaming of the Sandman and the owls and the wooden cow and the idle princess all at once, when she was awakened by hearing her name called. She sat up and rubbed her eyes, and Wiggles barked. Santa Claus was standing near them talking to a newcomer. And who should that newcomer be but Busy Buzz?
"Mother Goose thought it was about time for me to look you up,"
he explained after Bab had greeted him enthusiastically.
"Santa Claus tells me that you have been doing very well. Aha!"
he added, seeming pleased.
"So you have the dog at last? What did I tell you? But let me hear more about this rescue of the wooden cow. What did you say the brownies wanted to do with the pieces?"
"They wanted," began Bab, but Santa Claus interrupted her.
"My dear child," he said, "though they were indeed sent by the wicked king, as they told you, they were sent chiefly for the purpose of trying to stop you in your journey and preventing you from reaching me. They tried their best to get you to help them chop up my cow, and if you had, you would have been in the power of the wicked king forever and ever. The reason that they wanted a horn of the magic cow was that with one of them, or even a piece of one, you can turn people into wood at a moment's notice. And the wicked king and Grump are always on the lookout for spells, particularly those which can be put to a bad use in bad hands."
Bab was much shocked by all this, but Busy Buzz nodded his head and said,
"Of course, that's simple enough. Everyone knows their methods. It's lucky for you, Bab, that you did not listen to their coaxing."
Bab thought so too, and she felt more ashamed than ever when she remembered that she had even hesitated for a moment.
"Well,"
said Santa Claus,
"now that the little girl has done her duty so well and served me so usefully, how is she to get home?"
"Do you want to go directly back to Mother Goose?"
asked Busy Buzz, turning to her. She hesitated.
I'd like to help Dick first," she answered. "He has the hardest task of us all, and then, you see, I should most awfully love to help set poor Mother Goose's son free."
Good,
cried Santa Claus heartily.
well thought of. You shall go to your brother this very night, and
He paused and smiled slyly.
I know how you will go.
How? asked Bab.
Never you mind,
Chuckled the old gentleman mysteriously.
you'll like it, I promise you.
But what help can she be to her brother?
Asked Busybuzz.
Nothing but the very strongest magic could be of any use to him in the Red City.
Well,
Said Santa Claus.
why shouldn't she have a bit of magic about her, just in case she needed it? And as a matter of fact,
He added.
it's odd, that she didn't collect any magic coming through the wonderful wood.
Perhaps she did.
Suggested Busybuzz.
Did you drink from any spring, Bab?
Or pick a flower or a leaf?
Asked Santa Claus. She shook her head. I sat down on a bank, she said, and yes, I picked daisies in the idle princess's garden.
But you didn't keep them?
Oh, no, I didn't keep anything.
Oh, wait, yes, I have some sand. And she laughed.
Sand.
Repeated Santa Claus. Yes, declared Bab, putting her hand in her pocket and drawing it out. Look, sand from the Sandman's country. The world of sand.
Just the thing.
Cried Santa Claus and Busybuzz together.
Take care of that sand, Bab.
Said the former.
With even a grain of that, you could send anyone fast asleep if you just threw the grain at him.
Lovely! Bab clapped her hands after carefully returning the sand to her pocket. Perhaps, who knows, I can send the wicked king to sleep for 100 years.
Or Grump,
Said Santa Claus.
it really would be nice if Grump could be sent to sleep for 100 years.
Now, do you know,
Said Busybuzz thoughtfully.
I think that sleep would be far too good for Grump.
Let's hurry, begged Bab, who was anxious to be on the road that led to the Red City.
Slowly, slowly,
Said Santa Claus.
First, my dear, would you not like to see my house?
Yes,
Said Bab doubtfully.
only please excuse me, dear Santa Claus, but
My workshop,
Went on Santa Claus.
my fairy kitchen, my toy hen yard, my reindeer.
Oh, have you real reindeer? Asked Bab, forgetting Dick for a moment. I've heard of them, but I never knew that you really, truly had them. What are they like?
What? Did you never read the stories of my friend Hans Christian Andersen?
Asked Santa Claus. No, said Bab, shamefacedly. We had them for a Christmas present one year, but we never read them. We thought make-believe things were silly then.
Ah, very sad indeed,
Declared Santa Claus, shaking his head.
But, my dear child, reindeer are not make-believe things, though, to be sure, mine are not quite like ordinary animals. I'm surprised, by the by, that you did not see them when you were in the barn.
Were they there? Cried Bab excitedly. No, I did not see them. It was very dark, and you see, I was so much interested in the wooden cow,
I'll take you down to the barn again,
said Santa Claus.
and show them to you.
Bab felt as though she could not bear to delay another moment, kind as Santa Claus had been to her, and delightful as it was in his little house. But she stifled her impatience and said, "Thank you," as politely as she knew how. But just at that moment, there was a slight sound at the window, the lightest tap-tapping, such as you hear when a June bug bumps and buzzes against the pane in midsummer. Santa Claus opened the window, and in flew a big green dragonfly. "Is Busybuzz here?" he asked in a high humming voice. "Here I am," said Busybuzz,
How are you, Greenwings?
Oh, it's you, said the dragonfly. Evidently they were old friends. Well, I've hunted you through the wind channels, and the storm road of clouds, and the tree-top pathway, and every other route I could think of. I happened to meet Clang and Tinkle just now on their way to the fairy court. They told me they had seen you come in this direction.
Well, hurry up,
said Busybuzz impatiently.
What do you want me for? There is a mortal boy in the Red City who asked my help.
What? Cried the three listeners all together.
A small boy, as boys go,
pursued Greenwings.
He told me to bring you word concerning him. Well, well, said Busybuzz. Go on. He's been caught by the men-at-arms of the wicked king,
said the dragonfly.
Things looked rather badly for him when I left. Oh dear, exclaimed Bab and began to cry. Poor, poor Dicky. I must not lose a minute, cried Busybuzz. I'll go to him at once and... Wait, perhaps Meg has done her task by this time. If so, she has the spell Dick needs. I'll stop at the fairy court on my way. Thanks, Greenwings, thanks. Goodbye, goodbye.
And he darted, still buzzing busily, out of the window.
Oh, Busybuzz, dear Busybuzz, called Bab, please take me with you. You can follow me if you like.
His voice floated back to her.
Santa Claus will show you the way.
And he was quite gone forthwith. The dragonfly polished off his wings in front of the fire, much to the excitement of Wiggles. Then he flew away, his gauzy person flashing through the open window like that of a spirit.
Oh, how can I follow Busybuzz? Sobbed Bab. And I did so want to help Dicky. That dreadful king will surely behead him.
Now listen to me,
said Santa Claus.
I have a plan which I think you'll like. Why should not you go straight to the Red City yourself and help your brother in your own way, without paying any further attention to Busybuzz? He is only a goblin messenger after all. You have the sleep sand, and I am going to give you the means of making an escape at any time. What do you say?
Oh, it would be lovely, cried Bab. May I start at once, please?
Of course. Come with me, and I will show you the way you are to go.
They hurried out, followed by Wiggles, and Santa Claus led the way to the barn. In all her excitement, Bab could not help stopping to speak to her friend, the wooden cow, and the beast seemed pleased to see her.
I'm so glad I have something to remember her by,
said Bab, showing Santa Claus the scrap of wood which she still carried in her pocket. Santa Claus started and then laughed.
Do you remember what I told you about her horns? He said. Well, never mind. Of course you don't. But that bit of wood is a very powerful weapon, Miss Bab, and don't you throw it at anyone unless you are in the greatest possible danger. Don't forget.
And Bab did not forget.
Goodbye, wooden cow,
she said, and turned away.
Oh, Santa Claus, Santa Claus, what is the way I am to go?
This way,
said Santa Claus. He rolled back another door inside the barn. By the light of the lantern he carried, Bab could see some beautiful animals standing in stalls such as horses have. But these were not horses. They had great spreading antlers, delicate hoofs, and noble heads, and they looked at Santa Claus and stamped as though in the highest excitement.
They are anxious to be off,
he said, looking at them proudly.
There, my beauties, only a moment more. Ah, they missed the Christmas season, poor beasts.
But what? Why?
Stammered Bab, bewildered.
Come on, said Santa Claus. Help me.
But, said Bab, to do what? Santa Claus looked at her and laughed aloud.
To harness the reindeer,
he cried. At the court of the fairies, Meg was standing before the Queen, saying goodbye. "How am I to send the spell back to you after we have freed Humpty Dumpty?" she said. "Busy Buzz will bring it. He is an old friend of mine and always welcome at court." Suddenly, two musical voices were heard singing. "Hush, clang and tinkle," said the Queen. "I wish to bid the little mortal girl goodbye in peace." "But," said the two goblins, "we want to tell her that we met her sister a short time ago, and that she seemed in excellent health and admired our music greatly." "How nice!" cried Meg. "I'm so glad you met Bab." But the Queen interrupted. "You must not talk to these two idle-headed goblins," she said severely. "Think of poor Humpty Dumpty and hurry. If Clang and Tinkle did meet your sister, I am certain that they delayed her all they could." The two hung their heads, but suddenly raised them again. "But," they explained, "we want to make up for all that by suggesting that it is not safe for the mortal girl to travel back alone with the spell through the wonderful wood." "I suppose that you both want to go with her," said the Queen. "Surely, Your Majesty," said the two cheerfully. "So that you may have someone to admire you and listen to your singing?" said the Queen scornfully. "No, indeed, you shall not go with her. But I agree with you about the dangers of her going alone. Let me think." Just at that moment, a soft, whirring noise was heard overhead. "What is that?" exclaimed the Fairy Queen. Meg clapped her hands joyfully. "It's Busy Buzz," she cried. "Perhaps he has brought some news." Busy Buzz alighted in front of the Queen and bowed low. "Your Majesty's humble servant," he said. "What news? What news, Busy Buzz?" cried Meg. "I must know first of all if you have any news." With an excited flutter of his gauzy wings, he answered, "News indeed. Bab has finished her task." "And I mine," said Meg proudly. "Really? Now that is better still," said good little Busy Buzz with the greatest possible satisfaction. "Well, then, we are all ready to go to Dick's assistance, and he needs us. I have Moon Eyes waiting in the wood for you, and Bab will follow to the Red City under the directions of Santa Claus, who has taken a great fancy to her." Meg said goodbye to the Fairy Queen in a flutter of excitement, and, clasping her precious blue scroll very tightly, she hurried away after Busy Buzz, and the fairies called "Good fortune" after them as they went. In the woods, they found Moon Eyes waiting with owl-like patience. As Meg mounted, with a caress for the wise and silent bird, she felt a thrill of excitement, a joy in adventure which she had never felt before. "Now then," cried Busy Buzz, "to rescue Dick and Humpty Dumpty from the clutches of the wicked king." Chapter 14. Danger. When the door of the princess's room opened and both she and Dick turned toward it, what do you suppose they saw? They saw a little girl in a brown dress with black spots on it. A little girl who had dark eyes and hair, and was followed by a small, excited fox terrier. For they saw none other than Bab herself. She ran into the room and hugged her brother, crying, "Oh, Dickie, Dickie, dear! How glad I am to see you again!" Wiggles jumped about and yelped with joy, and altogether you might have supposed that they had all been separated for years instead of only. But dear me, I forgot. We don't know how long it had been, after all. For, of course, in make-believe land, they count very differently from the way we do. Naturally, both Dick and Bab forgot all about the princess until she said quite crossly, "Well, I do think you might introduce her to me." Dick jumped. "Oh dear, I forgot," he exclaimed. "Princess, this is my sister Bab." "Bab," repeated the princess. "What a funny name." "It's really Barbara," explained Bab. "But I think that's really worse, isn't it? And, anyway, Bab's shorter." "Oh,
Yes, certainly. And it's a very nice name, said the princess politely. A very nice name, I'm sure. Well, little Bab, or Barbara, or whatever your name is, what are you doing here? If you please, princess, said Bab timidly, I am here to help Dicky save Humpty Dumpty. And himself, added the princess mischievously. You know he needs saving too, just now. And the princess, put in Dick. And poor dear Mudge, finished the princess. Dear me, exclaimed Bab. Have you all got to be rescued? Every single one, declared the princess. Your brother, what did you say his name was? Duck? Oh, no, Dick. Dick and I were just talking the matter over when you came in. We aren't very certain how to go about it. Oh, but I am, said Bab confidently. Indeed, exclaimed the princess in surprise. Yes, said Bab importantly. How do you suppose I got in here? I haven't the slightest idea, answered the princess sincerely. It's almost as hard to get in here as to get out. Not quite, though, she added thoughtfully. Well, first, said Bab, I'll tell you about my journey to Santa Claus. That will explain a little. And she told them all about her trip through the wonderful wood, and about the Sandman, and the brownies, and the wooden cow, and the arrival of the dragonfly. But, cried Dick at this point, I only sent the message a minute ago. Then he paused a minute, bewildered. Was it only a minute ago, after all? He did not seem to be able to count the time. My dear children, said the princess, you must never try to count time in make-believe land. Time either does not exist here, or else there is so much of it that you simply can't measure it. I don't know which it is, but anyway, it is silly to try to guess how long anything takes here. Well, said Bab, who didn't care anything about time herself, I got into Santa Claus's sleigh, and the reindeer brought me safely to the Red City. I left them in the wood and came here as fast as I could. A little boy showed me the way. Mudge, said Dick, but how did you get into the tower? Bab chuckled. I threw some sand at the men who tried to stop me, she said, and they, every single one, went fast asleep. The princess opened her eyes and mouth in amazement. The guards outside this room too? She asked with a gasp. Bab nodded triumphantly. I had just enough sleep sand left for them, she said. Oh, cried the princess with another little gasp. Then I'm free. And she jumped up and ran to the door, stumbling over her flowing gold-embroidered robes as she ran, and overturning a box of jewels in her haste. She opened the door, and there, sure enough, were all the guards sound asleep on the floor outside. Oh, 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 cried the princess and hugged Bab in her excitement. You blessed little thing, you darling, you've set me free. And then she hugged Dick too, and then all three of them laughed and talked all at once, and Wiggles rushed around them in a circle and howled his sympathy. Now, said the princess, picking up her skirts, let's run. And they all scurried away out of the palace as fast as mice. They passed the men-at-arms that Bab had met below, who were all as sound asleep as possible, just where they had happened to be when Bab threw the sand at them. All, that is, except one man. He was only half asleep and was yawning and stretching and trying hard to wake up. I'm afraid he did not get a whole grain, said Bab, looking at him anxiously. Well, never mind. I guess he won't wake quite up until we are safe away anyway. Come, hurry up. And they ran on again. But the drowsy man-at-arms did wake quite up just at that very moment. And yawning and shivering with sleep, he stumbled into the throne room of the palace, calling out, Thief! Thief! A thief has stolen away the princess! Help! Help! Now, the palace of the wicked king was simply full of people of all sorts. There were plenty of men-at-arms and retainers and cooks
and gentlemen in waiting, and courtiers, and scullions, and pages, and maids, and court ladies, and when the sleepy soldier cried thief and help, they all came running out of their rooms all over the palace and hurried downstairs. And there was the wildest excitement possible in the throne room of the wicked king. And then the door of the royal apartments opened, and the wicked king himself appeared. And he said, in a deep, angry voice, "Why is there so much noise?" And everyone trembled and bowed low before him, for of course they were all dreadfully afraid of him. For a minute or two, no one dared to speak, and the king stood there in his crimson robes, with his gold crown on his wicked head, and glared at everybody. "Well?" he thundered suddenly, and the sleepy soldier ventured to speak at last. "Lord, master," he quavered, "two strangers have carried off the princess." "What?" roared the wicked king. "And what were you doing, all of you, while they were carrying her off?" "Your Majesty," said the poor man-at-arms, we were asleep." And then he took to his heels and ran away as hard and fast and far as he could. The wicked king was so disturbed by the fact of Star's disappearance that he did not take the time and trouble to have the man caught and beheaded, as he certainly would have done at any other time. "Where is Grump?" he demanded, looking quite pale with rage and fear. "He has not yet appeared," said one of the courtiers. "He has not been here today at all. Oh, most augustly wicked king." "Strange," muttered the wicked king. "Surely nothing can have gone wrong. He was to have brought me the spell from the fairy queen before this. It should certainly be in the city by now." And as a matter of fact, it was in the city then, but it had not been brought by Grump. For, as we know, Grump had been robbed of all his wicked powers by Meg in his underground cave, and instead of being able to fly on a cloud to his master with his woes, he had to travel slowly and painfully through the wood and over the sea of glass like any other everyday sort of person. At this moment, who should come swarming in but the mischief brownies? The very same bad little sprites whom Bab had outwitted in Santa Claus's barn. They hurried into the wicked king's palace and wailed out their story, how they had stopped the mortal girl, as had been commanded, and how she had followed them and chased them out of the barn with a frightful roaring monster, just as they had cut off one of the wooden cow's magic horns. The wicked king listened to all that they had to say in a white rage. Were all his plans to go wrong? The situation was infuriating. His servants outwitted by a simple, ordinary, stupid little mortal girl. His daughter stolen. With an awful growl of anger, he waved his hand. "Follow the thieves!" he cried. "Men-at-arms, courtiers, servants, gentlemen in waiting, catch them at once. Half my kingdom for the man who brings me the heads of all the scoundrels and returns to me my daughter." Before a single breath could be drawn, a whole army of his subjects had rushed away after the escaping three. And then, who do you suppose came stumbling into the throne room, making a great outcry and waving his arms wildly? None other than Grump. "Master, your Majesty," he panted. "She tipped over the pot of magic, and she escaped. She has gone to fairyland. What shall we do? What shall we do?" The wicked king was at the end of his patience. "I have not lost all of my magic yet," he thundered. "You are a pretty sort of a servant. You are an idiot, a useless, slow, dull idiot. You are a snail." Then an idea struck him.
Be a snail, he commanded.
And Grump shriveled up and turned into a snail and crawled away into a crack in the palace wall. And that was the end of him. Then a messenger came flying to the wicked king and cried, "Oh, master, they have run the thieves into a corner under the city wall, and soon they will be caught and beheaded."
"I should like the pleasure of doing it myself," said the wicked king grimly. "Have them left alive until I get there."
And he stalked out of the palace and followed the messenger through the streets of the Red City. Finally, he came upon a great crowd of his subjects, and beyond them, standing against the wall, were Bab and Dick and the princess, frightened almost to death.
"Ah,"
said the wicked king with a cruel smile,
"now I have you, you impudent creatures, you upstarts from the real world. Now I will cut off your heads with my own hands."
And he drew his sword.
So, the wicked king has drawn his sword, and Bab, Dick, and the princess are cornered. With Grump gone and the king's blade ready, is this the end of our heroes from the real world? If you want to make sure you're there the moment we find out if they escape the wicked king's blade, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. It's the only way to ensure you don't miss our return to the Red City, our next episode, By the Wall. And if you're rooting for our real world heroes, toss this video a like to help more people join our rescue mission. See you then. Take care and bye-bye.